the market's just basically, again, they're just kind of like chopping around here. Nothing. Not much going on in the markets. They're just kind of chopping around here. You know, the new tariffs, obviously, it didn't even spook the markets now, right? The markets are actually right now, they're down about, on the Dow is down about 177 points. And the NASDAQ, which is almost like the more important one to watch, because most of the companies of any significance these days are on the NASDAQ instead of the Dow. Like all the big tech companies are on the NASDAQ, not the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones used to be the industrial average, which is kind of like the manufacturing kind of thing, and, you know, industry and that, whereas the NASDAQ is where all the big tech companies live.
It's Ford versus Google, isn't it, really? But
there you go. You're talking about energy as Canada's superpower, and that's Tim Hodson saying that. And Ottawa is committed to building infrastructure to get its energy products to market. And obviously, he was speaking in Calgary there. And he said it gives us the opportunity to build the strongest economy in the G7. One of the things he did say, to achieve that, Canada needs to build the necessary infrastructure, but also invest in carbon capture, methane reduction, and other technologies to ensure Canadian oil and gas is being produced responsibly. So, you know, obviously, I think, you know, Carney talked about it prior to his run and prior to, or in his run as PM, about carbon credits. That uranium one is going to come in a bit here, but you can go back to the other one. But anyway, and he says, Hodgson also said they require to finish that Pathways project, which is the carbon capture storage network in Alberta. There you go.
I mean, it was kind of one of those, he was like self-aware while he was doing it, but it was clearly, it was a charm offensive that he's been told to go there and to make Albertans swoon and Saskatchewans, wow, to make them, just to give them something to be happy about. And he even like referenced that. He was like, you know, I came, my first trip, and he was saying it was to Regina, I think. And it was like, that's not a coincidence or something, or that's not by accident. Like, it was all about trying to kind of suck up to the prairies, basically, and to the oil and gas industry.
If you are the energy minister, you better go where the energy is being produced.
Yeah, but I mean, from this particular government, or from this party, this political party, let's say, it was a new tone to adopt. It was something new to hear, because it was, I believe it was Wilkinson, wasn't it, before, who didn't, he was never that enthusiastic about energy. But I don't know, he said a lot of things, but he did also talk about electricity. You know, east-west electricity lines. He worked for a hydro company in Ontario called Hydro One. He was in charge of it, actually. So he obviously knows his way around a grid. And he was talking a lot about that, and that makes sense. I think that's quite wise. But he was also talking about how, you know, what we talked about yesterday, how Canadian energy can displace dirty energy around the world and bring down emissions, and how important it is to do that. And he also talked about a time in 1973, which I must admit I'm ignorant of, when the Americans commandeered or bought some oil that was going to go to Eastern Canada. They just took it off. It was during the oil embargo, during that oil crisis. They just took it off Canada, and Canada was just kind of left there like, you know, the sad clown. And he was saying, I never want that to happen again. I want Canada to be completely energy self-sufficient and safe. And obviously that's not the case now. Even though Canada produces more oil than it consumes, that oil is produced in Alberta by and large, and can't be transported to the east without going through the US first. So, and
they buy it from the Middle East, right?
Yeah, exactly. They buy it from anywhere they can get it. They're very promiscuous about it in Quebec, aren't they? While finding the energy to condemn Alberta for some reason.
Well, I mean, if you want to do some carbon capture, you just buy a tree and put it in your backyard, and then send the federal government a bill for carbon capture.
Or you could just breathe. You could just breathe into a bottle, maybe, and then put the lid on. That's carbon capture, isn't it?
Plastic is actually carbon capture, because oil and gas is used to make the plastic, then it's captured in the plastic. So there you go.
Yeah, Daniel Smith was trying to, in vain, trying to discuss that about bitumen. She was trying to talk about that kind of thing at
Uh,
that Western conference, but I don't know. I
You
don't
know,
know if Phoebe
it's
was
kind of
listening.
odd. You weren't even allowed to say these things just a while ago with the Trudeau Liberals, that you were a climate denier. If you even talked about selling LNG to other places that would actually reduce carbon emissions in the world, right? Like that was just nonsense, according to Guilbeault. So there you go. Bank of Canada could cut about 3 times this year too. That's something. There's quite a few people out there saying that the Bank of Canada is obviously going to cut here in the June one. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but it's highly probable that they cut here in June. And depending on what happens with all these tariffs and stuff like that, although it seems to have really calmed right down for Canada right
Well,
now.
I mean, we're in a position where we have pretty high unemployment, a stagnating economy that needs life breathed into it, um,
Yeah,
pretty low inflation, relatively speaking, and also lots of debt. So you think in those circumstances, get the rates cut, wouldn't you? You'd think it was just like a
I don't think
foregone
they have a
conclusion,
choice.
but
I don't think they have a choice. Yeah, and I forgot to mention, in as far as energy goes, there's a lot of hot air in Ontario that could be maybe utilized, and that would be for me like
yeah,
Doug
especially
Ford.
around here where I
In Ottawa, I think it's the epicenter of like helium or something.
am. We should capture that.
Uh, yeah, Trump also signing an order there this morning on nuclear energy. And nuclear stocks definitely shot up this morning, even on the Canadian indexes. Denison Mines, we can put up that thing there. Denison Mines, which is one of the exploration type. Well, I mean, it's got some resources there, but it's not in production. I think part of theirs is in production. And Cameco, both of those stocks up dramatically this morning. I'm just trying to find it here. Denison right now is up 11%. And I believe Cameco is probably up around. Cameco, one of the biggest producers in the world, in Saskatchewan as well. And Denison Mines is also Saskatchewan. So, yeah, so Cameco up about 9% this morning on this news from Donald Trump that they want to get nuclear energy going. So, and like, in the U.S., lots of the nuclear stocks surged as he signed the executive order to speed up construction of reactors. And, like some of the stuff down in the States jumped 25% and 18%. Constellation Energy. There you go. And that is the Defense Production Act declaring national emergency. They want to get a lot of reactors online, and that, like even some of the big tech companies, I think they wanted to get, I think it was Microsoft wants to get 3 Mile Island going again. And there's a chart of where Cameco's operations are. Canada is one of the greatest miners in the world, and Cameco is one of Canada's, like stellar companies too, Cameco. Big uranium company out of Saskatchewan.
As Timmy was saying there in Calgary just now, like Canada's best. He said it's just like it's the best in the world when it comes to mining. It has the best miners in the world, and that happens to be, for once, not necessarily an exaggeration by a politician. It is actually true, isn't it? I mean, Australia is quite famous as well, but
Tim must be watching the show, because we've been saying that for how long? Canada is one of the richest resource nations in the world, and we have some of the best miners. I was a mine site controller. The bad thing is it takes 20 years to get a mine permitted. That's the sad thing. It takes 20 years to get a mine permitted. And I worked on site, and it's just hard to get anything done. It's just super hard to get anything done. And we have some of the best people too. The TSX is loaded with mining companies, but you know where most of them are? And I've interviewed quite a few of the very highly experienced miners here in Canada. They're B2 Gold, Clive, Beddoes. Most of their mines aren't in Canada. Yeah. And Silvercrest.
Mexico, Chile, places like that.
I interviewed the CEO for Silvercrest, Eric. Mexico. Because it's easier to get things done. So unless they fix that, like British Columbia's got a big problem with that. British Columbia, one of the hotbeds of mining, or was one of the hotbeds of mining, and Ontario as well. But
as soon as you try and do something, you get news stories like that one that we looked at, where it's BC First Nations fear that protests and conflict might result, or you get the Green Party, who usually have a disproportionate amount of power, saying, no, we don't like this at all. Or you get, it's just like all of these pressure groups that they're so strong, aren't they? And
So,
That's why that's why you need the federal government. That's why you need a strong federal government to start coming and laying down the law a bit.
And fast tracking stuff. I worked in a mine that we were building just south of Thompson, where the big Inco nickel mine is in Thompson itself. I mean, that's why Thompson's built, is because of that big nickel mine. But we were working on a smaller deposit in Waboden, which is about an hour south of Thompson. And that was bought out by the Chinese. There you go.
Many such cases, as Donald Trump would say.
There you go. Gold is kind of chunking around there, actually recovering a bit, the geopolitical stuff, and I think just in general, a lot of people trying to diversify, and gold, not the antiquated asset, or not dead, as some people would have called it, including our own government that sold all our gold reserves way back when, and Mark Carney was part of some of that when he was the Bank of Canada governor. Said it was an antiquated asset that is no longer necessary, and they sold it all for around $1,200. Oops.
Everyone makes mistakes, I guess. He did say that, didn't he? It's like, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'll make a lot more, or something along those lines. It's like, all right, well, at least you admit it. Bitcoin
broke a record, and now it's kind of backed off a bit. Like I said, that's the fight, right? That line, the new high is the fight. And it's broke out, did that new high, and then was about $111,000 or something like that, almost $112,000. And now it's backed off a bit, and now trading around 109. It's the close on the Friday and stuff has a big, this doesn't really actually close, so. Bitcoin is one of the few assets that trades 24/7, 365. Hey?
Yeah, and it's very popular with all kinds of people, isn't it? Including assassins and all kinds of naughty people.
To be fair, that's what it used to be, but now a lot of the big investment firms in the United States, including there's ETFs on the exchanges in the United States for Bitcoin. A lot of people now, even the billionaires, are allocating a percentage of their assets towards the Bitcoin. And the Trump.
Didn't Trump say he's going to have a cryptocurrency strategic reserve or something?
Yeah, he talked about putting it as part of the national or their national reserves. So very favorable climate in the United States. Obviously, that's what you can see. If you can go back and look at that chart, and you go back, it's almost like halfway down the chart now. You can look at November, and you can see the jump, like you're right about there. That is the election. Not much word from the Carney liberals on Bitcoin. I mean, I know Justin Trudeau mocked Bitcoin a lot when Pierre Poilievre came out. Pierre Poilievre very silent on the Bitcoin, although in his disclosure, Pierre Poilievre is an owner of Bitcoin. I think he had about $10,000 worth of this stuff. So he did put his money where his mouth is. He did buy some Bitcoin.
So he's got like 1/11th of a Bitcoin.
Well, I don't know when he bought it. So if he bought it when it was 50,
yeah, true. It's probably a bit more than that. Yeah.
It's likely double, because when he was talking about it, don't forget Justin Trudeau made fun of him because he bought it. I think it was when he started talking, it was in the 70s, and it fell all the way into the 50s, right? And that was like if you can go back in time, that was a huge opportunity, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Canadian dollar, again, looking for direction. Again, U.S. dollar weakness actually holding up the Canadian dollar right now. So
I'm surprised. I mean, I don't know if it's. Yeah, I mean, it does seem to be going up a little bit just today.
I
wonder if that's in reaction to Hodgson, because that was. I mean, if you're a currency trader and you specialize in the loonie, that's going to get you excited, isn't it?
It's a resource currency for sure, and a favorable environment for resources would move that dollar higher.
And that was very strongly implied by Hodgson there. So
it's not rocket science. It's absolutely not rocket science. You want to stop the separatist talk in Alberta? Give them a pipeline. You want to increase the value of the U.S. dollar or the Canadian dollar? Be pro-resources. You want to help Canadians become more prosperous? Be pro-resource. Again, not rocket science, but apparently for the Trudeau Liberals, it was very much rocket science.
Well, they had in their mind they had a bigger fish to fry. They prioritized the concern about climate change
Right.
over every other concern, including, you know, trying to get rid of poverty in Canada, trying to diminish poverty in Canada.
Will they be the
And
last
I
one
think now we're
standing?
getting to a point where we realize that maybe that shouldn't be the order of priorities.
Will Canada be the last one standing in this climate change thing? Now, New Zealand calling it a day. Obviously, America, the big player. The biggest economies right now, Canada. Sorry, Canada. The United States, China, India. They're just going full steam.
Yeah. Well, the biggest one that I think of is Germany. They're all in. They're all in on net zero. And then
Yeah.
the Brits, the British Labour Party, but they're very very unpopular in Britain, the Labour Party. So I don't think they're going to be around very long. And as when they're kicked out, I would say net zero will be history. So then that'll be Britain gone. So then it'll just be Canada and Germany, I guess.
Yeah.